The very fact that I'm Muslim means intrinsically that is now British. The very fact that I'm an adherent Muslim means that being an adherent Muslim, Islam is now a British phenomenon. It's part of the British mosaic. We have to come to terms with that. So in the debate about what it means to be British, we have to realize that those who are Muslims have an equal stake in that debate, in defining what it means to be British. So by default, everything I am here now in front of you is British. The fact that I eat halal is British. The fact that I pray is British. The fact that my wife sitting here covers her head is a British phenomenon. Because she's British and I'm British. So in that debate of identity, we have an equal stake. But that can only come about if we empower ourselves by calling ourselves British Muslims and not by running away from that and saying that we're not British Muslims. Because then not only do we isolate ourselves from that debate, but we encourage segregation and further the polarization that feeds into the neoconservative and Islamist agenda on both ends of the spectrum. And by that I mean American neoconservative, Douglas, for your sake. And so, by empowering ourselves as British Muslims, we then have to seek the solutions in the institutions that exist in our country. Through the politics. That doesn't mean that we join one party or the other. That's up to you. That's up to you, deciding on what you think is best. But we have to be active. We have to empower ourselves and seek the solutions through the institutions that exist in our society. And I'd like to conclude here by... I saw you writing that. I'd like to conclude here and preempt the chair who told me beforehand he's going to give me a hard time, so I'm preparing you for that. He's not my enemy. I'd like to conclude here by saying that I don't believe in minority politics. I don't believe in what multiculturalism has led to in this society. I do not believe in lobby or pressure group politics where we only get involved in politics in those issues that we think Islam defines, in those issues we think are relevant only to Muslims. This is divisive politics. But rather we have to get involved in politics as British citizens who have at the heart of our interests, we have what? We have the welfare of our society in our hearts. Guided by our principles that we find in Islam, but not only representing Muslims, but representing the good people of this country. And I'd like to end it there, and I thank you for being a very good audience. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم ولسائر المسلمين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
Well, that should put the cat amongst the pigeons. Any pigeons who want to kick off? I'm going to take a question right at the back there, yeah? Could you just start by just mentioning your name and then speak as loud as possible, yeah?
Yeah. The problem I have is, don't you think that, even though people accept that you're changing everything, and that you've reviewed your methodology and so forth, but don't you think that there's the danger that you might get discredited because of some of the people who are kind of putting you to the fore? People like Ed Hussein and who say quite...
And Rashad Yaqub.
Yeah, no, but it's quite serious actually. People who do say really detrimental things in the media and so on and so forth. Do you think that's really kind of helpful in terms of what you're trying to, get across in terms of the review of your sort of methodology and so forth, your ideology?
Did everybody get the question?
Yeah.
You heard the question, okay?
Sorry, secondly, because I know Maajid anyway, so he won't mind, inshallah. But Maajid, the case with the Nigerian student who was made out that it was something to do with HT. Now, I don't really like to defend HT, but in that instance, it has to be said, it wasn't really anything to do with Islamism or HT, because some of us in London, we actually know the individuals who were involved, and that was not, you can't say that it's something to do with HT or Islamism. That's what Ed Hussein said in his book, and that's completely false. Now, to say the least, that's false.
Okay, let's reply to those questions, and then I'll take some more questions. I've noted the hands.
Yeah, Abdullah, thanks. You know some of the individuals that were involved because you know me as well, and I was involved. And I was the president of the Students' Union, expelled with all of the committee, who were all HT activists. They were expelled by the college because they were involved. And how the situation unfolded was Saeed Noor, the man convicted for the murder, was only introduced to Newham College campus upon the president of the Students' Union's invite, and that was me. I invited him into the college. The first thing he said in Newham College when he entered that college was, "Where are the Hizb ut-Tahrir brothers?" Wallahi, brother, this is the truth. This is how it unfolded before my eyes and before Ed Hussein's eyes, who's here. We invited him onto that campus to my regret. I'm very sorry for that. But we invited him onto that campus. Subsequently, he became our bodyguard. He showed me the knife he used to carry with him, which was about that long. And he would keep it in his leather jacket. And he told me explicitly, if ever you have any trouble, here's my card. His card said Sword of God on it. He said, ring my number and I'll come straight down. He rented an apartment, literally in East London, though he was from Brixton. He rented an apartment in the local area so he could be on hand whenever we needed him. We were directly involved in that murder, to my great regret. Now, we weren't involved in the actual act itself, in the actus reus. We were involved in the way in which we radicalized that campus and invited people such as this man onto the campus. And I hope by now he's changed his thinking. On your first question, those who perhaps promote some of my ideas, or I don't know, those who quote me in the media, such as Ed Hussein, well, I thank them for quoting me in the media, because as many people that can push these ideas forward, the better. I will work with whoever is somebody who agrees with the way in which I think we should be discussing these issues, and that means whether he's a Muslim or a non-Muslim, I'll work with whoever I can and cooperate with whoever I can on the good. And that includes members of Hizb ut-Tahrir. If they want to sit with me and talk, I will sit with them. I've put this out many times. I'll sit with anyone to talk with them. And so I'm not going to cut somebody out of my life just because I may agree or disagree with some things he may or may not have said. I've known this man that you spoke about since I was 17 years old, and we've become very good friends. I'm not going to cut somebody out of my life just because you or someone else may disagree with something they said, but rather I'll work with whoever I can on the good. And I believe this is a Islamic principle. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, ta'awunu ala al-birri wa taqwa wa la ta'awunu ala al-ithmi wal udwan. Cooperate on the righteousness and the piety, and do not cooperate on the sin and the evil doings. Islamism has degrees, and I spent time in prison with some real nut jobs. One of them told me that there were no other Muslims in the whole world apart from him. and that before he can accept anybody to be a Muslim, he has to interrogate them, because praying or having a beard are no longer signs of being Muslims, because didn't you see Sadat prayed? You know, so you can't be a Muslim if you pray, that's not enough. He had to interrogate everybody, and the first question he would ask is, do you say sovereignty is for God? And do you believe democracy is anti-Islamic? It's against the principles of Islam? And if you said yes to both, you're a Muslim. So Islamism has degrees. And incidentally, I then asked this man, do you believe in killing everyone in Egypt because they're not Muslims? He said, well, if there is a war, yes, but there's no war here. So I said, well, what about Algeria? And he said, well, what's happening in Algeria is fine. You know, killing them all, it's perfectly fine because they're not Muslims. So that's the one end of the extreme. And then we have what I'm talking about today, is the group I belong to, which are politically Islamist, who are ideologically Islamist, and they're not violent until the point in which they establish their state, and then that state will be violent. But that's a bit like Tony Blair and the Labour Party, because the Labour Party isn't a terrorist state, isn't a terrorist party, but it established a state which then engaged in war. So my point to those who say that perhaps Hizb ut-Tahrir are terrorists is the same, is that no, they're not terrorists, but they want to establish a state that will engage in war on a much grander scale than Tony Blair would even dream of. So again, you've got the ideological Muslims, and they are dogmatically Islamist. They are dogmatically, they believe in Islamism, and so with the Turkish example, and this leads on to your question, Erdogan in Turkey, he's the head of an elected government. Now, some Islamists will have you believe that they oppose dictatorships in the Arab world, but actually they oppose democracies and dictatorships, representative governments and tyrannies. And the reason why is that because they're not ruling by the Islamist ideology. So it's actually an ideological opposition. So in Turkey, Hizb ut-Tahrir, for a fact, is working to militarily overthrow Erdogan. And they believe he's an apostate because he's not ruling with Islamism, and he swore an oath to Mustafa Kemal and the constitution. So again, there are grades. Now, what I think you're talking about are those who aren't revolutionary, those who are perhaps Islamists in the social sense. I don't agree with Islamism at all, and I think Islamism is a modern phenomenon superimposed upon Islam and is bad for Islam. However, just as those who don't agree with Islamism have their own grades, so Ed Hussein is here, and I'm perhaps